Before we get too far into today's episode, I wanted to show some pictures of some parts that showed up. Here's some sick rocket racing wheels. They're called the Flare, and they're awesome. I don't have to tell you that, but check out this bead seat here. It's knurled so you don't slip a tire. It's awesome for racing or street or drifting in our application. And here's some awesome comp cams parts. You'll be seeing a lot more of these as we start putting the engine together, and why we choose these and how they've been proven on my previous cars. All right, got a update here. Got the brakes mostly plumbed. I still got to paint this bracket that I made to hold the proportioning valve, which I'll probably forget to do. So that'll just end up rusting. Anyway, bought a kit that's just complete stainless braided lines, or nylon braided, I guess. And pretty much designed for the car. Although they wanted us to run a line from here across the subframe over to this side. And I ended up moving my brackets to the frame. So if I have to drop the subframe, it's just one less step. And you just take the calipers off and hang them, and then you don't have to mess with the brake system. So I called and ordered a custom line to go from here, along there, over to yonder. And then ran this one back. I took the evap line out, ran this one back along here, and lines were too long for what I'm trying to do, so I just kind of wrapped them back around a few times. Well, one time, using these little P-clips. So, and again, put the brackets on the chassis. So hopefully these are long enough to reach. If not, I'll be redoing that. So anyway, pretty happy with that. And now I got the shop a bit cleaned up, some stuff put away. And I've got the torque tube out, and I've got the drive shaft out of the torque tube. And we're going to replace these bushings with just fresh ones. And the reason for that is they're a common failure point. So I'm going to put some fresh ones in. However, typically on my race cars, we do solid bushings. But on this one, I feel like with all the shock from clutch dumps and everything, I feel like having rubber here is a good idea. And we'll just replace them every couple of years probably. And take our chances there, because I feel like that's a much cheaper fusible link than a differential or a transmission. Axle's not a big deal, but I don't know if these axles break very much, but I'd like to keep the differential in one piece. So I'm going to leave rubber bushings on the transmission, the engine, and right here. So that's the next step. You have to heat the crap out of these, and it's going to smoke like crazy. But they do have Loctite on them, so you gotta heat those before you can get them out. So that's the next step. Thank you to Tick Performance for sponsoring these new couplers, and you can see that's all the Loctite that they used, and so that's why you gotta heat them up a little bit. And we will reapply Loctite. I'll clean these threads off with a wire wheel, and we will put fresh Loctite on when we put them back in. So you can see those are off. I got 6 out of 12 done. I'm going to go to the vise now with this and get that one off. On my last one, figured I'd show you what I'm doing. Clean bolts, ready to go back in with some fresh Loctite. Got that all done and back assembled. Now we're on to the next thing. We're going to address a couple failure points here. One being the stock slave cylinder or throwout bearing of the clutch. This little part right here, that little guy is plastic, and that in a race car application will often melt and then get stuck, and then your clutch doesn't work. And that's a big deal because it's a big job to get to it. So when you're replacing it, make sure you either get a replacement sleeve for that, or better yet, get a new one like this one from Quartermaster where it's got metal. So now we're good to go. No problem with that. The next thing we're doing is replacing the clutch master cylinder. This one is from Tick Performance again. And this is their C5, C6 kit. It's designed specifically for the car with this adapter plate, and then it uses just a nice high-end Tilton master and AN fittings and everything. So we will go get that in place now. The other thing I like about this is it's adjustable length. So that can do two things. First, that we can lower the pedal closer to the floor, which is something I like. I don't need a clutch to throw 2 feet like most stock clutches. It only needs to travel 3-4 inches. So that way it sits, I like them flush with the dead pedal. So when you're going back and forth from the dead pedal to the clutch, it's just right there. You don't have to lift your leg all the way off the floor and your knee up to your chin to get it on the clutch. So that's the first thing it can do, and that's the way I prefer it. The other thing is then you can just use the floor as your clutch stop instead of having to build a clutch stop, basically. So now we're only traveling. You don't want to over travel these things. So although these are stock, but depending on the relationship of the size of your master cylinder and the whatever you use for a slave cylinder, you don't want to over travel them. So a lot of people will use a clutch stop in an aftermarket application, whereas I just use the floor. So we're only traveling 3-4 inches. Should be perfect. It's time to get this thing down to a short block. We'll see how long it takes. Hopefully I can get this in like an hour or less would be sweet. I'll report back as I find things and see how the wear is and how parts look, and I'll update you then. She's out. She's apart. We're down to a short block. Not the cleanest engine I've ever seen or taken apart. Look at the amount of carbon in this thing. I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's a lot of carbon. So I think maybe this guy just drove it like a baby, or maybe he had bad gas or something. I don't know. But definitely not brand new anyway. But we'll get it cleaned up and improved. We'll also replace this little weenie LS3 camshaft and pick up like 100 horsepower thanks to comp cams. So I'll flip it over here so you can see the underside. Also, if anybody knows, I've never seen this before. I don't know what in the world that would be from. I mean, it looks like a push rod was beaten up next to that hole. Maybe this was like a trunnion failure at some point. Answer if you know. All the rockers felt fine. I guess I didn't really even look at them that close, and they don't appear to be upgraded. They appear to be stock. Everything looked stock. Push rods, lifters, all that stuff was stock. So I wouldn't suspect anyone's ever been in here, but I also don't understand why it would be looking like it's all been beat up. So if you have an idea on that, let me know. Underneath, everything looks good down here. I guess I didn't inspect that closely. I didn't expect to find anything weird down here, but yeah. Takes like less than an hour to take a long block LS down to a short block. It's pretty awesome with accessories. So good job, Chevrolet. Yeah, so waiting on a few parts. We'll start putting this thing back together after we clean it, and yeah, I'm excited. Well, we ended up getting a brand new block. Brand new short block. Just want to make sure it was perfect. Just kidding, we didn't. Before and after here. Yuck! So I just went through and cleaned these up. Chased all the head holes. Cleaned all the threads out. And that looks a bit better. Got that thing all cleaned up. Moved on to heads. And started cleaning this one. This was far worse than it is now. But then I also popped off these springs so that I could check for installed height. And I got our comp cams stuff. We got their conical valve springs. Those aren't seats. What the heck do they call these? Spring seat, yeah. New seals, and then retainers and locks. So I installed just temporarily one of the seats, which I should take out now before I forget, and one of the locks with the freaking retainer. There we go. And checked installed height with not the fanciest of tools, but I checked it a bunch of times to make sure it was right. So now I think I need to get some springs ordered. According to the formula, I need to get a 1.1 spring shim. So that is the next thing to do, and at least it was close on the intake and exhaust, close enough that I think I can run a 0.1 the whole way. I'll check a few more as I go, but I'm too lazy to check all 16. So anyway, off we go. Update time. Got the rear bumper off. I'll be working on the quarters here shortly. But I'm also going to start my cutting of the hood. We got a track spec vent here to help get rid of all that heat. So I'll be starting on that here shortly. Got the fenders off, laid out. Those are much easier, by the way, than the rear bumper. The bumper's kind of a pain. A few little parts that are kind of tough to get off the rear bumper, but that's all done. While I'm waiting for some other parts to show up, decided I'd cut a giant hole in the hood so this thing can breathe a little bit and let some of that heat out, because we know it's going to be hot. So plus, I'm keeping AC in this thing. I ordered a new AC condenser, and I'm keeping AC because I want to be chilling in between rounds and streetcar. Bash bars have arrived. Pretty nice, very nice actually. Got the tow hook there. Very nice welds. Like better than Sean can do anyway. And the front actually looks pretty sweet too. Plus, this is going to double as a place I'm going to mount some tabs on this for coolers. So I'll have, sorry you can't see that. I'll have a oil power steering cooler on this side and an oil cooler on this side. So hopefully all that works out pretty good. I hope my sizing is correct. We'll find out soon. I don't think I've updated for a minute. I'm going to get these babies scrubbed down with Scotch-Brite, clean them off, and get them ready for paint. I've got them in my paint booth here, as you can see. So, yeah, I got my tabs welded on for my coolers here. So those are all set and ready to be painted. And, of course, you know we're already going with black. I'm not about that neon life like most drifters, so. Here's our girl's power steering cooler. It's got
wearing a mask,
two
so you
built-in
can't tell
fans,
what I'm
and
saying.
here's our oil cooler, also by Earl's.
Got them all painted, ready to go back
Gonna
on
be
the car
sick.
once they dry.